The NewsNation is following this growing outrage over what's become a devastating effect of the government shutdown. It is now preventing the families of fallen soldiers from collecting death benefits used to help with funerals, even flights for families to meet their loved ones who've died. A senior defense official tells NBC News 17 service members have died since the government shutdown on October 1st, and that none of their families have received those benefits. Among them, the family of 19-year-old Marine Lance Corporal Jeremiah Collins of Milwaukee. He was killed Saturday while on patrol in the Helmand province. His grieving mother spoke with our NBC affiliate in Milwaukee.
There is nothing like this pain. For the sacrifice that our kids are making at the age that they're making them, I don't understand how this can be a benefit that's withheld. I won't ever understand it.
Joining me now, NBC News Pentagon correspondent Jim Miklaszewski. Mick, there's been some back and forth as to whether or not this was a call or a decision made by the Pentagon or something that was required from the government shutdown. Clear this up for us.
Well, you know, it's definitely not a call by the Pentagon. In fact, lawyers here in the Pentagon went to every possible length to figure out how to get around the law that shut the government down and try to work it into Pay the Military Now Act. They looked at every possible loophole and couldn't make it work. So at least temporarily, the benefits will not be paid. It's a $100,000 benefit, which is meant to cover the travel, burial, and the like. And it applies not only to service members killed in action, but any service member who dies. If a service member were to walk out of the Pentagon today and get hit by a car, God forbid, and be killed, they would be paid this same $100,000 benefit. Not now, of course, because it's suspended. But once this government shutdown is lifted, Pentagon officials say that the benefit will in fact be paid, that the $100,000 is being allocated as we speak for those who are killed in action or in accident or died naturally, as a matter of fact. And then once the shutdown is over, those funds should be made immediately available to the families of those service members.
All right, Mick, thank you very much. Let me bring in Amy Nyberger Miller. She's of the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, or TAPS, a nonprofit organization which provides emotional help for anyone who suffered the loss of a military loved one. Also joining us, Iraq War vet Jon Soltz, the chairman and co-founder of VoteVets.org. Thank you both for joining. Amy, I'll start off with you because you know this tragedy all too well here. But before I get your reaction, there were 4 other U.S. soldiers killed over the weekend. Lieutenant Jennifer Moreno, 25 years old. Patrick C. Hawkins, 25 years old. Joseph Peters, 24. Cody Patterson, age 24. Your reaction to this fallout from the shutdown only being discussed now after an excellent report from Andrea Mitchell. I think a lot of people think it is sickening, to be honest with you.
Well, I think it is very heart-wrenching to know that these newly bereaved families will not have these benefits available to them at a time of great need when they need to bring their families together to grieve.
Jon, we talk with you often, and I know that you're quite a passionate guy, and when my team told me that this was something that you really wanted to speak out about, we wanted to get your voice on here. You were vets all day long. What are they telling you?
I've gotten a lot of calls today, obviously. I mean, one of my buddies just called me. He was a professor at the academy, did a couple tours in Iraq, and he called it the ultimate disgrace. I mean, I'm actually embarrassed today. I mean, I'm sitting by, in front of the Capitol here. This $100,000 is important. It's supposed to come with the casualty assistance officer. There's another $1,200 of indemnity compensation to these families. I couldn't imagine if I was one of those 1,700, and it's absolutely a shame. And I think it's the absolute example why we need to completely fund the government. When we try to piecemeal this thing, something like this is going to fall through, and it's an absolute slap in the face to those who've died. And certainly our organization, Vote Vets, is going to continue to hold the GOP accountable, specifically in next election, specifically members of the House who have led us to this point.
Well, Amy, it was last week we watched those World War II vets attempt to see the memorial and were not initially able to go in as a result of the government shutdown here. This raises the stakes of emotion, I think, to the next level. If you were upset about seeing them being treated the way they were, I don't know how people let this pass, but I want to play with Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont. He was addressing the presiding officer of the Senate. Let's play what he said. Okay, we don't have it, but basically, Amy, he said, we send our soldiers to war. We tell them that we're there if something happens to their families. And now, just because of a small group of Tea Party Republicans, we say we can't even take care of your family when you die in the service. I don't want you to get into the politics of this or, you know, what side do you blame? But again, what message would you send to members of Congress as we look at these families who are grieving and are left in the cold?
Well, we have, fortunately, a number of organizations have stood up, including the Army Relief Society, the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, and others who are coming forward to try to help fund emergency travel for these families and to help families with immediate needs. We at TAPS are ready to try to help support these families. Our role is very much providing bereavement care and support, and we are compiling a list of these many resources that are available so that we can be there to assist these families. And there is a community here that is ready to embrace and support these families.
All right, Amy, thank you very much. John, thank you as well. We are awaiting the president, but meanwhile, let me bring in Democratic Congresswoman Gwen Moore of Wisconsin. We hope to have her here in a second. Is Mark Murray still with us? Mark, let me bring you back in. We're talking about these benefits for military families. Obviously, my father served this country 30 years in the Army. I can't pretend that this does not hurt when you hear something like this. But this is not the only impact that needs to be discussed. What's happened with, for example, Head Start programs, where now you're looking at an individual who will donate some funds to help some kids go to Head Start as well. Assistance to, as we pointed out, single mothers, furloughed employees, the Capitol Police, who, you know, bravely protected members of Congress when we did not know what was playing out in that tragic scene last week, who also were not receiving the list goes on, and depending on what your interests are or depending on where your passions, you might get a little heated here, but the reality is there are innocent people who are the victims of this government shutdown.
Tamara, the federal government is the nation's largest employer, and of course there is always these big debates on how big the government should be. Republicans often want to make it smaller. Democrats want to be able to expand the social safety net and things like that, but it does have very big consequences. For example, just what happened if General Electric, which has always been seen as one of the nation's largest employers, just went belly up all of a sudden. That would have catastrophic impacts. And so you have seen, and this has been a partial government shutdown. There are still parts that are working. The president showing up today, he has some of his essential staff that are working. Same thing on Capitol Hill. But there have been so many services that aren't taking place, paychecks that aren't going out, websites that aren't working, job reports that aren't coming out, and all of that has an impact. Now we've reached day 8, and the question is, what goes on if this goes on yet another week?
All right, let me bring in, I'll get you to stand by. Let's bring in Democratic Congresswoman Gwen Moore of Wisconsin. Her district includes Milwaukee, where Lance Corporal Jeremiah Collins is from and where his family still lives. First, Congresswoman, we're waiting for the president, but quickly hear your reaction to this story that these family members will not get this money even to go retrieve the body of their loved one.
Tamaron, this is just so heartbreaking to hear. I am so sorry that this brave young man, this intelligence officer, Lance Corporal Jeremiah Collins, has lost his life in Afghanistan. My heart goes out to the family, and there's nothing that we can do to really relieve the grief and the pain that his brother and sister and mother and father are feeling, but at least we could not add to his grief by not providing the ability for this family to bury him decently. Usually these resources are provided to the family within 36 hours of someone like Marine Lance Corporal Collins passing. And because of the shutdown, despite passing the military bill and despite all of these antics with veterans bills, I mean, it really shows the problem of trying to cobble together and piece together a government. It is having an impact on everybody.
Ma'am, let me interrupt you really quickly.